The weather was hot and muggy the day Rosa Rice sang Rain and Snow for a couple of British song collectors. The next year, in 1917, the ballad was published in English folk songs from the Southern Appalachians. Only the first verse appeared, which in many versions is the setup for a tragic murder tale. With additional verses passed down by old-time singers and musicians, it became a familiar ballad on folk music festival stages and an expected jam at Grateful Dead concerts. Join me as we learn more about the traditional folk song Rain and Snow and its journey from the mountains to the recording studios in this episode of Playing in the Domain, a music history podcast with me, Thena Bloom. In the cold rain and snow. Rosa Rice, referred to as Mrs. Tom Rice in the publication English Folk Songs from the Southern Appalachians, performed Rain and Snow, among other songs, for British musicologist Cecil J. Sharp in the summer of 1916. Sharp, who had already studied and gathered folk music in England, decided communities settled by English in other parts of the world could yield previously unknown British folk songs. Folklorist Olive Dame Campbell, an American who knew of Sharp's musical interest from a previous meeting, had already collected many ballads from the Appalachians herself, and she invited him to the region. Assisted by Maud Karpeles, Sharp spent 9 weeks visiting singers there. The fictional plot of the 2000 movie Songcatcher is loosely based on Campbell and Sharp's work. Many well-known and popular bluegrass artists appeared in the movie, including Iris DeMent, who sings Pretty Sorrow, another song included in the 1917 song collection. I'm alone and for to ramble this wide world of thrill. Born in 1859, Cecil J. Sharp was a musician, composer, teacher, and choreographer, as well as an avid collector of English folk songs and dance styles. At a Shakespeare festival in 1909, he met Maud Karpeles, who had an interest in folk dance and had attended one of Sharp's classes. In 1913, at the age of 28, she began working with Sharp as his transcriber. Olive Dame Campbell, who lived and worked in the Appalachians, provided Cecil Sharp with her notes regarding ballads she had collected and shared credit with him on the 1917 collection. She and her husband John C. Campbell helped arrange for the British song collectors to visit local residents. John C. Campbell lived in the Appalachians where he had worked since graduating from seminary in 1895. His first wife died in 1905, and he married Olive Dame Campbell in 1907.
A native of Wisconsin, John C. Campbell spent 25 years in the Appalachian Mountains as a teacher and principal, and eventually served a term as president of Piedmont College in northern Georgia. Later, as an agent of the Southern Highland Division of the Russell Sage Foundation, he was tasked with collecting data about the socioeconomic conditions in the Southern Appalachians to be used in creating programs to improve the lives of its residents. Campbell's office in Asheville, North Carolina, was a bureau of information for agencies and missionary groups wishing to establish programs in the mountains, as well as a place for locals to seek help. After his death in 1919, his wife Olive compiled his notes and, attempting to write in his style, produced The Southern Highlander in His Home, published in 1921. Olive Campbell, who was a 1900 graduate of Tufts College in Boston, studied folk arts and education techniques abroad. In 1925, she established the John C. Campbell Folk School in Brasstown, North Carolina. The school first promoted improved agricultural practices and encouraged folk dancing and wood carving. The school still operates today with many more class offerings, including how to play the dulcimer.
When referring to the Southern Appalachians, Sharp was talking about a roughly 110,000-mile terrain of mountains and foothills stretching across the states of Virginia, West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, North and South Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama. Sharp reported that the population of the Southern Appalachian region at the time exceeded 5 million, with 3 million rural inhabitants. Logging and mining were the major industries, though most holding companies were located outside of the area. Railroads connected the cities to larger markets, but many hamlets and hollers were less accessible. John C. Campbell wrote of his time traveling by horseback on thin trails that snaked into the wilderness, where people lived simple lives of subsistence farming, with some able to gain employment in mining or logging. Song collector Cecil J. Sharp believed the residents of the Appalachians in 1917 to be direct descendants of immigrants from England and possibly lowland Scotland who came to America in the late 18th or early 19th centuries. While some of the residents did descend from these groups, immigrants were much more diverse, hailing from other parts of Scotland and many other places, including Ireland, Wales, France, Holland, and Germany. Enslaved black people had been brought to the area and forced to clear forests and work mines, while some free black people had made land claims. The area's original Native American inhabitants included Cherokee, Creek, and Choctaw. Cecil J. Sharp's focus was collecting old British ballads or folk songs and nothing else. No religious songs, no mining or other work songs. Some researchers and folklorists believe Sharp missed an opportunity by narrowing his search. For their project, Sharp and Carpeles visited many communities, including Flag Pond, Tennessee, and Woodridge, Virginia. Some areas were more fruitful than others. Big Laurel, Madison County, North Carolina, was a treasure trove. As the singers performed songs, Maud Carpeles transcribed the lyrics in shorthand, while Sharp took down the melody and later hummed it back to the singer to check for accuracy. Most sang a cappella, Sharp wrote, except for one singer who was accompanied by a guitar. Mrs. Campbell told him about an instrument played in Kentucky called the dulcimer, referring to the mountain or Appalachian dulcimer.
The Appalachian dulcimer is an American folk stringed instrument akin to the German zither. Its hollow body can be hourglass or rectangular in shape, with 3 or 4 strings and a fretboard that runs its entire length. Usually laid across the lap to play, one end is strummed, sometimes with a pick, to create a droning rhythm, while the other hand plays notes and chords.
Sharp and Carpeles would often call upon someone early in the morning and remain until dusk, sometimes sharing a midday meal with the family. His journal entry for August 16, 1916, revealed Sharp hadn't planned to visit the home of 61-year-old Rosa Rice, instead planning to meet with another singer who seems to have ghosted him. Someone remarked that Mrs. Tom Rice and 2 others lived down the road and might have some songs for him. Rosa Banks, also known as Rosie or Rossie, married Thomas Rice September 8, 1878. They had about 8 children. Thomas, like most of his neighbors and kin, was a farmer. Many grew gardens to feed their own families, while some may have raised a small crop such as tobacco for extra cash. And like most they knew, Thomas and Rosa were born and grew up on the mountain in or near Big Laurel. "Off I go," wrote Sharp, "to find that she is a small mine waiting to be worked." In his trip journal, he wrote, "On the whole, a very good day." Sharp commented how terribly hot it was the following day, August 17th, writing, "It was the hottest day, I think, that we have had in the mountains, and that is saying something." After breakfast, he returned to Rosa's, writing, "Got several more songs, 1 or 2 rather nice." After lunch, another local resident, Becky Griffin, came and sang some songs. Among the songs Rosa performed that day was "A Frog Went A-Courtin'." "Frog went a-courtin' and he did right, sword and pistol by his side." Off to Rosa's again the next day, August 18th, right after the morning meal. This time, Rosa introduced the song collectors to Minnie B. Shelton Rice, wife of her son Jesse. Minnie performed "My Mother Bid Me," which was included in Sharp and Campbell's published collection, along with another version performed by a different singer later in the research trip. "I gave him a stool and he looked like a fool in his torn up shoes and leggings." In all, Rosa Rice gave the researchers 26 songs, 15 of which were included in Campbell and Sharp's 1917 collection. "Lord, I married me a wife, she gave." One of the songs performed by Rosa on August 18th was "Rain and Snow." In the book, only the first verse, along with the melody on a treble staff, appear on the page. and snow made me. Ironic that Sharp had been complaining in his journal about how scorching the temperature was on a day when Rosa was singing about cold rain and snow. Maybe it helped to cool them off some. Together, Cecil Sharp and Olive Dame Campbell collected hundreds of tunes. For their book, they selected 55 ballads and 67 songs, which included a section of nursery rhymes. In some cases, different versions of the same ballad or song were printed, as performances varied. Sharp wrote that his distinction between a ballad and a song was more or less arbitrary. When talking about a ballad, we're not referring to the obligatory slow dance love song on every 70s and 80s hard rock album. Sharp defined ballad as a narrative song in which the singer is merely the storyteller with no personal connection, whereas a song is sung from a personal point of view. Some of the songs were not newly documented, Sharp said, writing that they had been included in the Child's Ballads, a published volume of English and Scottish ballads collected and edited by Francis James Childs between 1880 and 1900. Yet Sharp said some were new. He noted which ones were found in Europe and which ones were only found in America, writing, "Some of the song texts are quite new to me and are not to be found, so far as I've been able to discover, in any of the standard English collections." In the list is number 63, Rain and Snow. Could it be that Rain and Snow is an original Appalachian song sprung from events there, not Britain? We'll talk about that more in a moment, but first...
Staying in time.
World War I was on most people's minds in 1917 when Campbell and Sharp's folk song collection was published. But here's some other things that happened that year. Puerto Ricans were granted United States citizenship with passage of the Jones-Shafrath Act. A fire in Atlanta, Georgia, that began in a Decatur Street warehouse destroyed over 2,000 structures, including homes, churches, and businesses. Only one fatality occurred, but nearly 10,000 were displaced. The Royal Baking Powder Company produced 55 Ways to Save Eggs, a booklet promoting their product as a substitute for eggs, as prices for the real thing were rising. The Gulf Between, a dramedy, was the first motion picture made in Technicolor and the first full-length color film produced in the U.S. The film was destroyed in a 1961 fire, and only a few fragments are said to have survived. Many decades after Rosa Rice sang Rain and Snow for Cecil Sharp, an expanded version of the song was recorded in 1961 by Aubrey Ramsey.
Well, I married me a wife, she gave me trouble all of my life, ran me out in the cold rain and snow.
Ramsey, himself a resident of Big Laurel, North Carolina, released Rain and Snow, among other songs, on an album entitled Aubrey Ramsey Sings Folk Songs from the Three Laurels. Another Appalachian native, Dillard Chandler's version, was captured on field recordings and released on vinyl on multiple albums from the Smithsonian Folkways records. His verses for Rain and Snow included the husband murdering the wife, while in Aubrey Ramsey's version, the husband is just complaining about his perceived mistreatment.
And I took her to her room, where she made her fatal doom. And I
in the liner notes for one of the Smithsonian Folkways albums, Chandler stated he had learned the song from his cousin Brazilla Wallen. Wallen said she had learned it from an old lady in 1911 who told her it was based on a Madison County murder. So Rain and Snow may be based on events that happened in America, making it an American folk song, not a British one. I was unable to verify this claim nor tie the legend to a specific murder. This region has inspired other murder ballads, including Hang Down Your Head, Tom Dooley, based on the case of Tom Dula, who was accused of murdering his girlfriend Laura Foster in 1866 and later hanged. The Kingston Trio released a popular version in 1958.
Her with my knife. Hang down your head, Tom, Julie, hang down your head and cry.
Interest in folk music and original folk songs sparked a revival in the late 1950s and early 1960s, and Ramsey and Chandler's versions were recorded and released during this time. The Grateful Dead included Rain and Snow on their first album in 1965. Their version was said to be based on Aubrey Ramsey's and was regularly included in the live shows. This is a live 1989 performance in Orchard Park.
In the cold rain and snow. Rain and snow.
Other recordings of the ballad we'd like to highlight are, beginning with my favorite version, the British group Pentangle from a 1972 UK Granada television appearance. I like how they blended folk and rock. Lead vocalist Jackie McShee included a verse about apple juice, referring to another traditional song with the theme of a mistreated husband. Del McCoury's take showcases his high and lonesome vocals characteristic of bluegrass and the Appalachian region we've talked about. Another interpretation we liked is this slow jazz version, performed by Indra Rias Moore from a 2010 release. This is a live performance from Denmark. In her lyrics, she flips the narrative, taking on the character of the wife who's been put out in the cold rain and snow in this case. Rosa Rice, who sang the song for Sharp and Carpeles in 1916, died in 1918 at the age of 63, just 2 short years after the publication of English folk songs from the Southern Appalachians. The book was a source of pride for the community and the singers who performed for the song collectors. They had no idea the attention that would come to them and their music decades later, due in part to Sharp and Campbell's work. Other song collectors, some of whom already lived there, continued to document traditional songs in the Southern Appalachian region. In the 1960s, song collectors and scholars returned to Big Laurel to visit distant relations of Rosa Rice and others connected to the Wallen family. In our accompanying Extra Measure episode, we'll talk more about this family and the field recordings and films that captured their performances. And now, the Domain Players with Rain and Snow from Riverbend Studios. Made me work in the cold rain and snow. Lord, I married me a wife. She gave me trouble all my life. Made me work in the cold rain and snow. Rain and snow, rain and snow. Cold rain and snow. Made me work in the cold rain and snow. Well, she came down the stairs, brushing back a wavy hair, and her cheeks were as red as a rose. As a rose, red as a rose, and her cheeks were as red as a rose. Well, I did all I could do treated this way. Lord, I married me a wife. She gave me trouble all my life. Made me work in the cold rain and snow. Rain and snow, rain and snow. Cold rain and snow. Made me work in the cold rain and snow. Rain and snow, rain and snow. Cold rain and snow. Made me work in the cold rain and snow. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast about the folk song Rain and Snow. We encourage you to seek out audio and video of the performers mentioned in this podcast. In fact, right now, while you're thinking about it, I encourage you to check out the soundtrack to the 2000 movie Songcatcher. It includes many traditional Southern Appalachian folk songs performed by country and bluegrass artists such as Roseanne Cash and Patty Loveless, and includes a duet with legendary great Dolly Parton and actress and singer Emmy Rossum. You might remember Rossum from the TV show Shameless. Or give a listen to the 1964 Smithsonian Folkways album, Old Love Songs and Ballads from the Big Laurel, North Carolina, featuring field recordings of the Wallen family and their relations. Join us next time as we talk more about the Wallen family and the attention they garnered during the 1960s American folk music revival. Thank you for listening. This has been Thena Bloom with Playing in the Domain, a music history podcast. Bye, y'all.
This has been a Riverbend Studios production, 2024.
Playing in the domain.
Go to school, y'all.
Playing in the domain.
Bye, tunes.
Playing in the domain.
With the